Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today has purchased 9 mobile home parks valued at around $20 million. He started 4 years ago with no money, no network, and no experience. Ryan Narus joins us today. Ryan, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
I am honored to be here, and I'm excited.
Yeah, really excited. I think your story is really cool because you had no money, no experience, nothing, and you're at where you are right now.
And also no excuses, which is important.
That is so true. And we'll get into the no excuse thing later on. So to kick things off, tell us about your real estate goals right now and where you want to go with real estate.
So I've achieved time freedom, and it's fun to make money. And obviously I have my financial goals. I want to make, 10 million bucks plus, and have fancy things and be able to just live a wealthy lifestyle, obviously, like everybody. But the truth is, what is way more meaningful to me and what I really, 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 truly want to do, which is just the charitable aspect of my business. So we've offered partial scholarship for anybody in our mobile home parks that want to go to school. Cool. We've offered to pay for college applications. We've done free food giveaways. We've done Bible studies, Zumba classes, and we are actively looking for more, because I think what I've realized now is I've kind of become a jack of all trades, master of none with charity work. And so I want to find one thing that's really the maximum impactfulness, and I want to just dump so much of my time into that, because like I said, it's cool making money. It's cool having time freedom. It's cool buying things, but helping others makes me happier than anything else at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and guess, just from speaking with other guests, that once you do pump most of your time into that, your business is going to explode.
We'll see, man. Funny story. I actually used to sell cars. So I graduated at the wonderful time to graduate. That is 2009 from undergrad, and obviously no one was hiring. And so my old karate instructor was like, you could stay at home and live in your parents' house, or you could come and sell cars. And I was like, nothing is below me. I will do this. I will make the best of it. And when I started selling cars, I was like, this is what, if I am honest and transparent in how I sell and I'm not pushy, one of two things is going to happen. Either the whole system is going to implode and, you have to be scummy to sell cars, or it'll work. So you might have a point there. Maybe funneling all my time, or bigger chunks of my time, into the charitable aspect of my business, it may make it explode. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just going on conversations with other people, and there's something to do with serendipity or whatever it is. But once you focus on giving back, it's always had a huge effect on their business. So we'll have to have you back on in a couple of years, and then you can let us know what's happened.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So okay, so you're selling cars.
Yeah.
What were you doing right before you hopped into real estate? Were you still selling cars?
So I was a psychology major undergrad at Wake Forest University, stats minor, thought I was going to basically be Moneyball, like the movie Moneyball, where you figure out that the on-base percentage is the way to go in baseball. So I thought I was going to apply that to sales, and I did. And I actually kind of hacked my way into selling almost 900 cars in 4 years, won a bunch of awards. It was a blast until it wasn't anymore. And I just realized while I was selling cars that you work really, really hard, you overcome objections, you get blasted emotionally from multiple different angles. And then you walk home with a commission and it's done. Like, I remember I sprained my ankle playing basketball, and I was icing my ankle at home, and I went, I am not making money right now. So I went out and I bought crutches, and I showed up the next day in crutches to sell cars. And I don't know if it was that moment or what, but I just realized my body will fail me eventually. And I realized if I got promoted, it might be a little more money, but it's more of my time and more stress, and one step deeper down that rabbit hole where you can't get out. And so I realized at the car dealership in my early 20s, if I'm doing anything, it's within the auto industry, it's to have my name on the side of the building. Because that's the guy or the girl who shows up when you win and you have the banquet and then drives home in their Ferrari and doesn't think about it after that. And to me, I just realized I need to own my own business, and I know nothing about business. So I hate selling cars. So I went and got my MBA, and during this, I don't know, 5-year long process, I picked up any book I could pick up. I talked to anyone I could talk to. I looked at over 100 businesses, and I started a handful of businesses that went nowhere. And as luck would have it, I bumped into a childhood friend while I was getting my MBA who was like, "What do you think about mobile home parks?" And I was like, "If it's anything like the show Trailer Park Boys, sign me up, because that show is hilarious." So yeah, I mean, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like everybody, and it changed my life. I read Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week. That changed the way I look at entrepreneurship and lifestyle. But also, it was putting myself out there to talk to a bajillion people and try a bunch of different businesses out, and then eventually, and failing my way into finding something that was a fit.
Yeah. And, it's interesting how you said, you were selling cars, collecting the commissions, because that's exactly the way I felt, because I started off selling houses. So I was getting the real estate commissions, and, the higher your commission, the more stuff you buy, but then there's nothing left over. It's just money in, money out, and there's no assets behind it.
Yeah, so I made a pretty decent salary selling cars. If you're successful at it, you can make good money, but you're there always. And the funny thing of it is, what I do with my business, I'm an open book about this. I pay myself only $35,000 a year, and that's it. And every penny I make above that gets funneled directly back into my business. And that is on purpose, because if I think I only have 35 hitting my personal bank account, I spend that way. So even though I make way more than that, so in other words, I make good balance sheet money, and I deliberately make myself cash flow poor, because I want that money in a spot where I go, that is not real money to me. That is strictly for my business.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Plus it puts you in a better tax position too.
Oh, I wish that was true. That is absolutely not true, man. My wife and I got into it this morning, not in like an argumentative way, but she was like, "You realize this is how much we get paid, and that is how we're getting taxed for health insurance," which, don't get me started on that. But in other words, I pay myself 35, but I'm not getting certain things that I would get if I was only making 35. So as my business partner said earlier today, when you start doing really big things, you start experiencing really big problems. But at the end of the day, it's a minor speed bump that I won't think about in 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. And what would you say is your number one challenge right now with your business?
Oh, it's like everybody else. It's always finding deals. It's very, very difficult to find deals. And as much as I hate that it's a grind to find deals, I'm glad it is, because if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So how, over the years, just because, you've only been at it for a short time, how has your deal flow funnel changed in order to attract more deals to the funnel so you can underwrite?
It has changed massively since I've gone full time. And I talk about this on my podcast. I call it the Austin Powers death loop. So if you remember the movie Austin Powers, there's a fat bad guy who says something along the lines of, "I'm unhappy because I eat, and I eat because I'm unhappy."
You'll have to do the Scottish accent while saying it.
Oh, I can't. I could do an Irish accent, but not a Scottish accent. I have a friend of mine who's a home flipper, a single family home flipper, nothing to do with mobile home parks. And when I first met him, he just wanted to sit down because I was doing things in real estate. And I agreed to sit down with him, because I'll sit down with anybody. I don't care if you're a janitor or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I want to talk to you because there's something to be learned anywhere in between on that spectrum. And so I love talking to folks. So I sat down with this guy, and he hit me with that line, the real estate equivalent of that line. He said, "I'm not full time because I can't find deals, and I can't find deals because I'm not full time. And I guess, so this happened, I don't know, almost a year ago, six months to a year ago. So I didn't realize that I was in that same conundrum, and I lifted myself out of it by sacrificing. So I cut my salary big time to the 35 a year. And I literally, on one of our properties, I paid myself and was the physical property manager and lived in a mobile home on the property every other week for 14 months because I realized I needed to make a big sacrifice because I didn't have any money or experience or a network to lean on. So because of that, that's how I broke that Austin Powers death loop, right? Because I went full time, all of a sudden, and it's not like instant, but within 6 months of going full time, all of a sudden I was like, where are all these deals coming from? And it's because when you don't have to wake up and get in your car and drive to work before the sun comes up and then get home when the sun goes, after the sun goes down, all of a sudden you have time to invest in things like meeting brokers, talking to other owners, doing direct outreach. And so it's like, if you can, obviously don't just quit your job tomorrow. It took me a year to prove that mobile home parks could make me money, and then another year to plan to go full time. So it took me 2 years, not to mention the years of prep work, like reading books, meeting people, gaining skills, finding what business I was supposed to do. So it took years, but once I proved the concept and I went, my number one limiting factor is the Austin Powers thing. If I can just find a way to free up more of my time, and the biggest suck on my time is my full-time job in corporate America. And once you are at that point, it is then time to make a sacrifice.
Yeah. And I really like the Austin Powers analogy. I've never heard anybody use that before.
Well, thanks. I like comedy movies, and that movie is hysterical. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, but besides that, what other routines or rituals have you developed then that makes you a successful real estate investor?
So this is a little silly and off the wall.
All right, throw it.
Once a day, every day, no matter what, I am spending 15 minutes on my Duolingo app. So I'm self-taught in Spanish, and so I finished my Spanish earlier today, and I'm over 800 days. I think I'm like at 805 days. And it sounds silly, right? Like, whatever. Even my business partner, Ian, was like, dude, whatever. Like, I'm going to go and hire a fancy tutor and speak to this person in Colombia and buy this Tim Ferriss recommended program. Meanwhile, I'm using the free Duolingo app. And if you asked Ian right now, he would say Ryan's method proved victorious because my Spanish is a little bit better than his. And if you ask me why, and he may reluctantly agree with me, but it's that I do it every day. A little bit every day goes a long way. It is not a sprint. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon. So I know that's not directly related to real estate, but the lesson there is that if you just do even just 15 minutes a day, you set yourself, that compounds over time. And especially with a discipline like learning another language, it's not about memorizing and practicing for 3 hours a week on one day. It's about doing it every day.
Yeah, 100%. Though the only Spanish I know is ocho cerveza, por favor. So
uno más, por favor. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually at the resorts, you have to go ocho because they're so small. So, but no, that's such a key thing with having that consistency. So when you first got started, you were still working your job. How did you find time to maintain that consistency? And if you had any challenges, how did you overcome it?
Sure. So actually two things. So I can answer that with both those questions with that. So first and foremost, it's really tough because you have all the excuses in the world. Oh, I got work. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I got to spend time with my family, X, Y, or Z. So I have my business partner, Ian, who actually quit his job way before I did. He actually moved into my parents' house and lived in my childhood bedroom and paid himself something like $4,000 over a 9-month period. So, I mean, he cut his pay to beyond nothing. He was losing money to live with my parents. And meanwhile, I was working a cushy corporate job that paid really well. And what we decided to do is we would have 2 phone calls a day, one at the beginning of the day, one at the end of the day. And we would hold each other accountable for things. And although he was doing the bulk of the work during that time, he would tell you right now that those 2 phone calls helped keep him accountable. So it was crucial. And for me, on the other hand, he said, well, don't you have downtime sometimes at work, like a lunch hour? I'm like, oh no, I know where you're going with this. He's like, why don't you just use your lunch hour to cold call? And so then all of a sudden I found that on my on the clock hours, even driving to and from work, I could cold call, I could lead gen, I could talk to brokers, I could do work in my spare time and on weekends. And so at that point in time, there was no more excuses.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's the accountability of a business partner and just finding the time. If you really want it, you'll find a way to do it. If you don't really want it, you'll find an excuse.
Yeah. Is extreme sacrifice necessary for success?
I think so, but I think that's a bit of survivorship bias on my part. And here's why I say that. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I had to make a major sacrifice because I didn't have any money. I had $60,000 in student loan debt. So between my wife and I. So in other words, I had a pathetic amount of money in the bank. So in other words, I had more student loan debt than I had cash available to invest. So in other words, I didn't have a network. I didn't have experience. I didn't even know what a cap rate was starting off. I mean, I knew nothing. So in other words, I didn't have a choice. I had to make a sacrifice. I had to be a property manager. I had to quit my job and pay myself effectively nothing. I didn't have a choice. So on the one hand, I did make a major sacrifice, and I would say that I am here today because I made that major sacrifice. And I would like to look at the world and say, you also need to make a major sacrifice. But the truth is, it worked. I'm 4 years into it. Yeah, I still might go bankrupt in the next 6 months or 5 years or however long. But it's survivorship bias because how many other people also made major sacrifice and failed? So what I'll say to that is, yes, but I'm biased. But also, if you were to ask someone at 80 years old who failed in their 30s, like I'm in my 30s now, I started in my 20s, I'm 32. You were to ask someone in their 80s who failed in their 30s, I strongly doubt they would tell you, oh man, if I had only stayed at that job I felt stuck in and I hate it. They would probably tell you 2 things. Number one, I am proud that I had the courage to quit my job and chase my dream. And even though it didn't work out, I can look back at that and go, you know what, it didn't work out, but I had some serious courage. And not only that, as someone with a child, what better I can't think of many better lessons to teach your kids about going and chasing what you want out of this life and making sacrifice and refusing to be a victim and going out and putting yourself out there than doing it yourself and leading by example.
Yeah. Well, 100%. And that's, my little guy is almost 3 now. And for me, it's all about leading by example and showing him what can be accomplished, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. How old are your kids?
So my little guy, and this is a preemptive question that I know you're going to ask, and your audience doesn't know this. So I'm going to preemptively answer this question with that.
Okay.
So the question that you are going to ask me is how is in your personal life achieving time freedom freed you? What are the benefits? What do you taste? And I'm glad you asked that question because my son was born premature, and it was one of the most roller coaster experiences I have ever had. Right. So as you know, having a kid in and of itself, your first child, is just a roller coaster of emotions, coupled with the fact that he showed up almost 2 full months early. So he was 32 weeks. And so I got a phone call driving back. So I live in Charlotte. I was driving back from one of my properties in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I get a call from my mother-in-law. And she starts the call like this. She's like, okay, I'm going to say something and I don't want you to freak out. And I'm like, Miss Cindy, do you want me to freak out? Because that's how you get me to freak out. She's like, okay, so we are at the hospital. And I'm like, this is not a good phone call. She's like, we're stable. Jennifer, my wife, she's in labor. I go to the hospital. I rush to the hospital, and it's 32 weeks, and we are pumping her full of steroids for his little lungs in case he comes early, and magnesium sulfate drip. And long story short, she is just a trooper because magnesium sulfate basically gives you a fever and makes you feel hungover without any buzz and fun of alcohol. So, and plus panic and adrenaline. So it's a nightmare situation. But here's the thing. I was there. I was there that night. I was there that whole entire week. I slept at the hospital. I was there at the hospital. And I didn't have to worry about work. I didn't have to worry about PTO. I didn't have to worry about a leave of absence. I didn't have to worry about getting passed over for a promotion. I didn't have to worry about office politics. I just called up Ian, and Ian was like, say no more. I got it. So I have passive income coming in, and I have a business that runs itself without me. My business could continue on effectively indefinitely, barring any, catastrophes, if I wanted it to. So in other words, me stepping away just means I'm not going to grow it. So in other words, I've achieved that, and that allowed me to be there for my wife when she needed me the most. And then not only that, because he was premature, he is in the NICU, and he was in the NICU for about a month. And that is just a tremendous experience, being like, oh my gosh, here's your firstborn. You get to hold him for a quick second, and you get to hear him cry, and you get to say hello to him, and they put it on the mom's chest, and you look at him, and your mind is blown, and then they whisk him away, and he's gone for 3 hours, and you don't hear a word. And nothing. You have no idea if he's even breathing. And then you have to basically go home. And so you have to leave your son behind in this like incubator tube. And it's just, it was just surreal. And I was there the entire time. And if you're listening in, obviously you get drawn in because of the money, right? And then the time freedom and quitting your job. But I have to tell you, other than the charity work, which is just phenomenal, for me, real estate has allotted me the time for what I think really matters in life. So in other words, if I went back to corporate America or paid myself $100,000 or more a year, could I do it? Yeah. But I would also be spending a lot more of my time doing something else that wouldn't truly make me happy. And truth be told, I don't really want an extra $100,000 if that means a year or whatever, if that means I'm not around for my son or for my wife or for my family as I grow it. Because at the end of the day, when I'm 80, looking back on it, am I going to be like, man, you know what? I wasn't there for when my son was born, but I have all this money now. Like, come on. Yeah. So sorry to preemptively answer one of your subsequent questions, but I thought that was the perfect answer.
Oh no, well, 100%, and that's, I can't really follow up with any statement just because you laid it all out on the line. But that's the time, having the freedom to do that stuff is what it's all about. So let's hop over to a Keystone deal, a deal that made a big impact on you and your business. Is there one that comes to mind?
About every single deal that I do. So I'll briefly touch on one, and then I want to talk about another one.
Sure.
So my first deal ever, believe it or not, was a pocket listing from a broker. So this idea that you need to be well established or this, that, and the other thing to get pocket listings is not true. So our first deal ever, I called 40 banks, and this was a home run from a debt coverage ratio standpoint. I think the DCR was like 2, which most banks want about 1.2, 1.25. So it was a slam dunk. And I called 40 banks, and I'm proud to say this, I got 40 no's, 40 rejections. And eventually we had to pull a favor to get the deal done. But because of that, my second deal, I only called 15 banks, and I got 2 lenders to say yes. So in other words, and I didn't have to pull any favors, which is great. So in other words, the difference between your first deal, your 0.0 and 0.1 is absolutely game changing. So for those listening in who haven't done your first deal yet, do not wait around for a home run. Even if it's a single or even a walk, or even if you take a little bit of a loss, as long as you're not dead, as long as you're not done and doomed indefinitely, getting in the game will allow you to speak with so much more confidence and will give you the clout necessary to keep going. But the real Keystone deal that I think I really want to talk about is my biggest acquisition, which was La Costa Mobile Home Park in Atlanta, Georgia. And so it was a $10.5 million acquisition, 527 space mobile home park. We called the Griswold family, who we bought it from, who we are still friends with to this day. We love them. We love that family. And we called them up and just won them over. And it was just dumb luck, right? Right place, right time, right family. We just happened to have a lot in common with them, a lot of rapport with them. And they actually had an offer on the table from someone for a substantial amount more and turned them down in favor of us. And when, long story short, we bought the deal, the reason why this was so huge is because it was 48% occupied. So there was something like around 200 mobile homes there. Around, it was a little less, it was 280 or 279 and 245 residents. And we learned it all. We learned lift stations. We learned selling mobile homes. We learned bringing in new and used mobile homes. We learned overcoming objections, negotiating, marketing, getting blasted by folks. And we demanded, obviously, because we want to make a big sacrifice, we lived on the property. And I got to tell you, I didn't know prior to what a mobile home felt like at 12 a.m. in the middle of the night during a thunderous rainstorm. I didn't know what it was like on July 4th when the kids are running around at super late at night shooting bottle rockets and fireworks everywhere. So then when little Miss Janice comes in, 80-year-old Miss Janice comes in complaining about the kids, you go, Miss Janice, I know because I was there and I was also woken up and I'm also angry, right? You fundamentally understand what it is like your real client is going through if you live on the property. And it was steroids to my education and to my business, because I went from owning two and thinking I knew what I was talking about to then just 6 months into it going, I know more than folks I know who've been doing this for years, because I didn't buy something and hire a third-party management company to handle all the headaches. I was the one on the front line. So I got to say, by far and away, that was the best deal for me. And then I just took that same concept and bought a wonderful blow-up mattress for like $50. It still works to this day. I still sleep on properties because you just learn so much more. So it extends beyond that.
Yeah. And you were saying it was about 48% occupied. What was your game plan going in to change things up? Because obviously something wasn't working.
Correct. So first and foremost, get collections under control because they're a bit out of control. So, and there's another thing we could talk about forever is the magistrate court and collections, because this is ultimately a collections business. Any type of real estate that is cash flowing real estate is all, if you have tenants, you are in the collections business, whether you want to admit it or not. But step one is let's get collections under control. Let's get rents under control, because the not the son that we bought it from, but the dad that was running the show, he just was doing it old school. And there's nothing wrong with it. It was a profitable business. It's just that he survived the early 2000s bubble for manufactured homes, and long story short, didn't reinvest in his property and let homes get pulled away, because some of the aerial photos that we had for that property from in the middle of the 90s, the place was full. So just as people were defaulting on their loans, and then he wasn't reinvesting, buying these homes and keeping the homes there, eventually they were all getting pulled. So the strategy was find used and new homes, bring them in, sell vacant homes, negotiate with people who own their own homes that are way behind on rent to either get back to speed or to sell their homes to someone that are pre-qualified. So it was a grand strategy, and convert. So we had about 200 pads that were, give or take, about 200 pads that were vacant. And realistically, we're not going to bring in 200 mobile homes. So we actually ended up converting, I think by the time we left, about 20 to 30 pads to RV. So we got to learn how to build RV, how to market RV, how to handle RV tenants. So it was a tremendous experience. So in other words, we this was our obsession. This was our basically graduate school for mobile home parks. So it was a pretty robust strategy and needed two hardworking guys who were willing to devote every second that they were there, not sleeping. No, it's funny. I had two lawn chairs and a blow up mattress and a TV without a stand in our double wide, literally leaning against the side of the wall. And that was on purpose because we wanted it to be uncomfortable in that double wide, and we wanted to maximize our time in the office. So we weren't like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get back to that comfortable couch and that Xbox to go and play. Like, if we're in Atlanta during that week and away from our friends and family, we are working, period.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Bit bare bones. So have you guys done any refis on the property now that it's back up and running?
Yes. So we refied and actually requested a buyout from that property. So I don't own it anymore. I don't have the ownership stake in it. We did. So we've bought out from that one, Brittany, Countryside, Eastgate, Cherry Valley. And then we just did a buyout of Hillsborough. So we actually refied or got bought out 6 times now out of our 9 of them. Yeah. So in other words, the idea is in real estate is if you're in value add like I am, you buy it, you fix it, you either refi it or you flip out. And so for me, for the most part, I do refis, but every now and again, it just makes sense when you're starting with effectively no money like I am. Sometimes it stinks not being able to hold on to something for cash flow, but you've got to think of the opportunity cost. Like, yeah, you might be making, say, a 10% cash on cash return or better. But if you can take that money and multiply it somewhere else, you've got to do it. And so what I've been able to do is when I acquire a property, I'm able to multiply my cash flow. So it actually makes sense a lot of times to pull that out or just, like I said, or refinance it.
Yeah. And sometimes people offer to give you a really stupid check. So in that case, you can just say, thank you very much.
So I've been bought out 3 times now. So I currently own 6. I'm going to close on my 7th this week, Thursday, knock on wood. And all 3 of those times, I was pleasantly surprised to get bought out for actually more than I was even asking for, because the market is just so strong right now. So I've been just utterly tickled about getting my buyouts, even though it lowers my overall what I own at the moment. It's not about that. Real estate is not about, you have to get over loss aversion and going, oh, but I'm losing this cash flow. And you have to remember, what you're doing is you're in the business to multiply capital when you have no money. If you have $10 million or even $1 million liquid cash, if you can get a 10% return annually on $1 million, that's $100,000 a year. You're doing great. But if you're starting with, effectively more student loan debt than you are capital, you have no choice. You have to find a way to multiply your capital.
Yeah, well, 100%. So Ryan, if somebody's looking to reach out, get a hold of you, learn more about the deals, you mentioned your podcast, where can people find you?
And please, first and foremost, please do. Like I said earlier, the Austin Powers thing, that was from someone who just wanted a favor just to talk to someone in real estate, even though he will probably never be in mobile home parks. I don't care if you're a janitor or a CEO or anything between. I would love to talk to you. I mean that. Yeah. So my name is Ryan Narus. It's spelled Narus, N like Nancy. You can Google me. You can Google my group, Archimedes Group. Find me on LinkedIn. I will connect with you. I will talk to you. I have a podcast if you don't like to listen. I have a blog if you like to read. If you don't like to do that and you have your ADHD like I am and you have about a 90-second attention span, I have how-to videos on YouTube. Please come find me. My podcast is Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, and I will stress the IRL in real life portion. I want to talk about things that are not sexy, but that you need to hear. So even if you're not necessarily in mobile home parks, I have episodes like Starting with Nothing, where I talk about in more detail how you can monetize your way into being full-time. And that's important whether you're flipping homes or doing office or retail or whatever. So, or my LOI episode where I talk about things that you need before your LOI. So even if you're not in mobile home parks, tons to be learned there. And like I said, even if you have no intention of ever getting into mobile home parks, I would love to connect with you. So please do reach out.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, Ryan, just want to say thanks so much for sharing those stories and experiences with us.
Seth, I'm a big fan of your podcast. Keep them coming. And I'm totally honored to have been here. Seriously, it's been a total honor.
Yeah, it was a blast. And seriously, pleasure is all mine. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.